On this episode of the Jacob Buer Show, I am so happy to be joined by Hall of Famer Kurt Warner. How are you doing this afternoon?
Jacob, I'm doing really, really well. Excited to be on and love what you're doing. Love that you're taking advantage of this thing and jumping right in and building a platform. And happy to be on with you.
For sure. So take us through a little bit. When you first started, a lot of young people listen to my show. It isn't like ESPN where more college students and people like that listen. So take us through what was it like for you growing up? Um, you know, you went to UNI. What was it like growing up to get to that point, though?
I had a simple upbringing. We didn't have a whole lot. Came from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Lived in a small town, and most of life was revolving around friends and sports. And that's kind of what it was. Is I just loved playing every sport imaginable. I loved being out there with all my buddies. Whether it was an organized sport or whether we were just getting a bunch of guys to play in the front yard or play pickup basketball. So much of my relationships and my upbringing was surrounding sports. I thought it was a great way to bring people together, great way to build relationships, a great way to build confidence for young men and women and the people that we competed against. So that was that was pretty much what it was. It was very simple. I grew up in a Catholic home, so went to Catholic school, went to Catholic church, so had a faith background. My parents were divorced when I was really young, so I was raised in a single parent home, one brother. Um, but it was a very simple lifestyle, but I loved it, and I didn't need a whole lot. Just give me a ball and give me a few friends, and we were happy, and we were kicking along. So life was simple, but it was good.
For sure. And you stayed in Iowa, went to University of Northern Iowa. You didn't play a lot until your senior year, of course, which kind of brings me into my next question. Oftentimes, you think of Hall of Famers, you think of people like, Peyton Manning, star at Tennessee University, or Dak Prescott coming out of Mississippi State, things like that. And for you, it's Division One, but it was subdivision, and you had to work your way up to get to where you're at, which I really admire, and I think that's really inspiring. What was that process like for you, realizing that you had to work 10 times as hard to get to where you wanted to be?
Well, first, let me say, Jacob, it doesn't matter if you're Peyton Manning or Dak Prescott or Kurt Warner. All of us worked hard to get where we were. Whether things were maybe a little bit easier or a little bit smoother in our path, all of those guys worked hard. All of us worked hard. We, put a lot of time into our craft to get better at our craft. But what you realize in life is that different people get different opportunities. And, there's a lot of different reasons for that. But I was one that never really wanted to harp so much on what opportunities I didn't get. I was more about taking advantage of the opportunities that I did get. And it wasn't exactly like I had dreamed it up. It didn't play out exactly like I had hoped it would play out. Even going off to college, only had one scholarship offer, but I was grateful that I got a scholarship offer and I had a chance to play football and felt like didn't matter where I was going to turn that into an opportunity in the NFL. Then I sat on the bench for 4 years in college. Maybe the hardest time throughout my career, thinking if I want to play professionally, if I want to be great professionally, and I can't even get on the field in college, and you mentioned it, a smaller school, like how is this going to work out? How am I going to play this out? Yet through all of that, I never lost confidence in who I was and what I felt I could do and the skills that I felt I had. I was just waiting for that opportunity to arise so I could show people what I was capable of. Maybe the biggest thing too is along the way, I learned a lot of things. I learned how to become a better practice player. I learned how to become a better teammate. I learned, what I needed to show the coaches if I wanted this opportunity, I needed to show them who I was going to be every day. I needed to show them what they could expect if they put the ball in my hands. And so I tried to take every situation, and even when they were frustrating, and learn from them and say, how can I get better in this situation? So when the opportunity does come, because I know it's going to come, when it comes, I'm ready for it and I don't miss out on it because, as you mentioned, Jacob, some of us don't get as many opportunities as other people. There's some guys that are going to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. More power to them. Other people, hey, you're going to get one opportunity. If you show us you can't do it, we're going to move on to someone else. So a big thing for me was always being ready, always being prepared. So when I finally did get that chance, I excelled in that moment, and that helped give me confidence. but it helped me to continue to move from one opportunity to another opportunity to another opportunity, and finally the opportunity that I would get to play in the NFL.
Yeah, and I mean for you, of course, you were on the Packers, practice squad mainly, then
Yeah.
with Barnstormers. Then you went to Amsterdam, even where you played with somebody else who I interviewed prior. And then boom, here you are in St. Louis. What is that moment like? Of course, you were on the Packers, but like it's your real moment was when you got to the Rams there. What was that like when it was like, here we go? The article behind you shows it pretty well. What's
Yeah.
that like for you when it's like you're finally here?
Yeah, I mean, it was, it was incredible. A lot of work to get there, a lot of time wondering if I was ever going to get that opportunity. So when I finally did, it was really special. But at the same time, it was very nerve wracking because I knew, having been in arena football and working in the grocery store and playing in Europe, I knew I wasn't going to get many opportunities. Once I got a chance to get the ball in my hands, it was kind of like, okay, here's your chance. Show us right now if you're good enough or not. I wasn't going to get 2 years. I wasn't going to get a second chance in the NFL. This was my one shot. So there's a lot of anxiety and nervousness to go with it. But I also felt I was really prepared. Right? I knew I was good enough. I knew what I was capable of. And my mindset was simply go do what you always do. You don't have to be better. You don't have to try to prove anything. If you just go out and do what you know you're capable of doing, what you've done every other time you've been between the lines playing football, everything's going to work out. And so that's what I always went back to. I always went back to what I knew about myself. You sat on the bench for 4 years in college, but I did play 1 year. In that 1 year, I was the best player in our conference, was voted the player of the year in our conference. I played 3 years in arena football, and I went to 2 championship games and was voted the best quarterback in the league. Best stats when I went to Europe of all the quarterbacks. So every time I had played, I was successful. So at least I knew that. I had that confidence going in that, hey, nobody had ever shown me that I can't play. It was just I wasn't getting the opportunities I wanted. So when I finally got the opportunity with the Rams, I was very confident in what I could do and who I could be. And I told myself, just go be what you've always been. You do what you've always done, and you'll be good enough to play at this level.
And that's how it happened. You said, you were there for when that one opportunity came. It's like buses, everyone says. You got to be ready. You can only have so much luck. You have to have preparation for when that luck moment comes, is what I've always heard my entire life from teachers, professors, coaches, bosses, etc.
Yeah.
For you, how has faith played a big play? Of course, I mean you've had you had a remarkable career in football, but for you, you've always put God first. Even after the Super Bowl win and your Hall of Fame introductory speech, you've always put God first. What's your advice for college students when it comes to faith? Because it's hard, with so many distractions in life.
I think the bottom line for advice for anybody is be who you are and represent what you want to represent. And that's kind of how I always lived my life, whether it was, within my faith is, I wasn't ashamed of my faith. I believed in what I believed for a reason. I had a purpose. I was convicted in it. So I wasn't afraid to just be and represent what I wanted to represent. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. That's probably the first piece of advice I give to anybody out there. And college students, as well, is that, hey, you go through and you evolve and you change and you make mistakes and you do all of that stuff. It doesn't have to affect the fact that, I'm a Christian or that I'm a man of faith. I know I'm going to make some mistakes along the way. I'm going to learn from them. I'm going to grow from them and continue to evolve. But for me, it was really just be authentic, be true to who you are in each and every situation, whether you're in a locker room, whether it's me being a parent, whether it's in the middle of a huddle, on a Sunday afternoon, whether it's hanging out with my buddy, whatever it is, be authentic and true to who you are. And when you get convicted in who you are, it's easy to represent whatever it is you want to represent. It's when we're uncomfortable, right? When we're not confident in who we are or what we believe that we start to step back and go, okay, I don't know if I want to say this here, or I don't know if I want to do this in front of all of these people. I was very comfortable with why I was the way that I was, with way I wanted to represent myself, the kind of character I wanted to always carry myself with, and even at the end of the day, the legacy. I wanted the legacy to be above reproach. I didn't want people to be able to ever find something that they could attack me or maybe even more importantly, because of my faith, that they could attack my faith, that they could attack Jesus because, oh, Kurt says he represents him and this is what Kurt does. And that was always kind of, my North Star. What I was always focused on was I'm not just representing me, I'm representing something bigger than me. And I want to make sure I take that into account in each and every situation that I'm in. And it doesn't mean I can't have fun. It doesn't mean I don't have great relationships and I can't be a normal person, but it just means that I'm conscious of what I do and how it reflects not only on me, but it reflects on other people, and what I want them to say about me and how I want them to feel about me after an interaction we have together.
That's that's very good advice right there. And then just taking back a step real quick, because I kind of missed over the Super Bowl there. What's it like for you? I mean, I've interviewed a couple Super Bowl quarterbacks, and I always like to ask them this question because I feel like other media outlets don't ask this question. I know you've done a lot of interviews. So for you, what is a tradition that you had specifically compared to the normal things that a quarterback would do before, leading up days or the day of? What's something that you did that was just totally different from the team that was personal to you before the Super Bowl?
I don't know if I wasn't a guy that was really superstitious. I wasn't a guy that had to eat the same meal or wear the same clothes or get up at the same time. That wasn't really a part of who I was. But I think we all, especially, in sports, we all develop, kind of our routines, what we do, how we warm up, what our process is getting ready for the game, what we do on different days from a preparation standpoint. And so I'm not sure I did things that were completely different from everybody else, but I did the things that I felt I needed to do to be successful. And so, Jacob, I say this all the time when people will ask me about, oh, how did you get to this point? Or what was your preparation like for a Super Bowl? The first thing I always ask them is, or tell them, is they need to understand who they are as a person, as a player, or whatever profession they're in. You got to understand who you are and what you need to do to be successful. You mentioned Peyton Manning earlier. Peyton Manning was a different kind of player than I was. So I could have asked Peyton Manning, how do you prepare for the Super Bowl? And think, oh, I'm going to go do exactly what Peyton does because he's a great player and it'll make me great. But realizing that I'm a different player than Peyton was, I had to prepare differently than Peyton did. And so for me, I think I did a lot of things that were at least to some degree different from other guys. Probably the same elements, watching film, studying plays, understanding the opponent, preparing a certain way, eating, working out, all of those things. But the bottom line was my plan was catered to what I felt I needed to do, what I felt were my greatest strengths. How do I bring out my greatest strengths on Super Bowl Sunday? What does the preparation look like? And so over years, I just developed that plan for me personally. Adopt things from different guys that seem to work for me. Other guys, man, they say great stuff, but I'm like, that's not going to work for me. And I have to discard that stuff. Even if it comes from a great player or a great leader or somebody great in the field that I'm in, I just had to figure out, who is Kurt Warner? What do I need to do? If I'm going to be great, what do I have to tap into and how do I need to prepare? And so that's how I went about every situation, and specifically the biggest situations that I was faced with, like a Super Bowl, is figuring out, how do I manage this? So when it comes on Sunday afternoon, I get 3 hours. I can be the best Kurt Warner for those 3 hours.
Wow, that's very, very valid. And then just a couple other questions I have. Where do you kind of see the game going as a whole, with the quarterback position? I always like to ask all of my quarterback guests this question because it's a changing game. Helmets have changed, as we all know. We're going to see it going.
Ironically, Jacob, although it's changed, I believe it also has very much stayed the same. And what do I mean by that? Players look different. Players play differently. A lot more athletic quarterbacks now that use their feet a lot more than they use their arm. But I still believe that the game always comes back to playing inside the pocket and throwing the football, being able to read defenses, decipher what's going on, and make the right decision and the right throw. There's going to be more guys that can do these really, really special things that we're seeing. right? The Patrick Mahomes and the Lamar Jacksons and the Josh Allens and those types of guys. But every year, I watch a lot of football. I still cover the league, but I watch every game every week. And all I see on a week basis is that those quarterbacks that play the best in structure, in the pocket, throwing the football, are always the ones that are the most successful. And so, although I believe it's going to look different, and you're going to see it continue to evolve from an athletic standpoint, I still believe in my whole heart that the game of football will always, from a quarterback position, will always be about, can you play the position in the pocket? Can you see what defenses are doing? Can you decipher it? And then can you make the right throw to the right guy, allowing the guys around you and the system around you to work for you? So I know if you looked at a game 20 years ago and you look at it now, you'd say, oh, it's so much different. I don't believe it's all that different. There are different aspects, but I still believe the quarterback position in its essence is played the same way.
Fair. And there's still 11 people on the field. So,
Yes.
and then my last question is, what advice would you have for the general college student who's looking to go out there, not necessarily to play pro football, but just advice for, college students? You tapped on Faith earlier, but you've worked several different jobs before you went pro, of course. So just what advice would you kind of have for young people in general from a broad standpoint on that aspect to kind of close it out?
I think I would say a couple things. I would say find a life that you enjoy, because it's one of the most fortunate things that I've had. Really the last 30 years of my life is I love what I do. I love waking up in the morning, whether that be playing in the NFL, whether that be covering the NFL, whether that be the things that I do outside of it. I love what I do. Now I understand. I'm in a different place now where I'm very blessed to be able to choose what I want to do. But I've worked hard to get to that place because I want my life to be made up of things that I really, really enjoy and that I look forward to, because I think it's hard to be great at anything if you don't love it. So find those things that you love, find those things that you enjoy, and focus on those things. I think too often we focus on money and making this much money and being able to do these sorts of things, which, Jacob, I'll tell you, there's obviously freedom in making a good living and be having financial success. But I don't think anything outweighs doing something that you enjoy doing. So as you're chasing this process, especially in the college, in those college years, is explore and figure it out. Figure out what it is that you love doing. Don't get caught in something where you're like, I went down this path and I don't really enjoy it, but this is where I went, so I feel like I have to do this. Explore and figure it out. This is the time in life, I believe, in college to figure it out, figure out what it is that you like to do, what you don't like to do, and make sure you find and create a path for yourself that you're going to enjoy for the next 30, 40, 50 years, because we all know most of us are going to be working for 40 or 50 years. I sure want to make sure that I'm enjoying every single day and I'm not just looking, forward to retirement, that I'm enjoying the process and the journey.
For sure. That's really good advice there. And any prediction for this upcoming Super Bowl, or too far out still?
Oh man, we always, I cover the league, so we got to make dumb predictions, before the season even starts all the time. But who knows? I mean, isn't that the beautiful thing about our game? Is unlike I think other sports and other situations, is that you never really know going into the season who's going to be really, really good and who's not. Who made the moves in the off season that's going to help catapult them up, to the next level, and who's going to go backwards. But I think the one thing we know, Jacob, is if you don't have a quarterback, you probably don't have a chance. So, if I'm looking at the teams that I think have a chance this next year, I'm looking at those teams that
Maybe the
have
Colts,
that guy. What's that?
maybe the Colts with Anthony Richardson.
Maybe the Colts, right? We haven't seen enough there, but maybe the Colts, maybe he can take that step. But obviously, Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow is one of my favorites. Can't wait to watch him next year. See how Jalen Hurts bounces back, from this past season as they struggled down the stretch. Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff. Does he get a chance to go to a Super Bowl with another team? And then, of course, Brock Purdy. A guy that played in Iowa, that's an Arizona kid where I live now, and so a guy that I'm rooting for because against some odds there, and doesn't look quite like all the other quarterbacks in the league, but a really, really good quarterback. So can he find his way back to the Super Bowl and maybe win one? But, those are the guys I got my eye on, to some degree. But what I love is the unpredictability of the NFL. I hope there's two or three teams that I haven't mentioned that we weren't sure about. Maybe the Houston Texans, the second year quarterback, making some moves there. Maybe they're a team that jump on the scene. But I'm hoping there's two or three teams that we didn't expect that have a great year next year and can compete for a championship.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Jacob Beer Show today. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it'll mean a lot to all your fans and everything. So thank you so much. And it'll mean a lot to Boilermakers as well.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jake. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.